Okay, everybody, we are back. And that little 4 second break. Hi, everybody. Oh, thank you so much for joining us tonight, especially my panelists. Yay! I am so excited to talk a little bit about the college audition process. I have to admit to everybody here, this was extremely selfish on my part. For those of you who don't know, I'm getting a doctorate in higher education leadership right now, and my research focuses on the college audition process. And so I said, ooh, I get an opportunity to talk to people about this, I'm going to take full advantage. So, excuse me while I do some research, and then also am able to turn it into an experience for our membership. I'm so excited that you all are here, panelists, to kind of demystify this process from a coaches and admissions perspective. So, a lot of the people on this call, I would say, are faculty or independent studio owners or people that are involved on that side of the process, but maybe not so much from the coach's perspective all the time. And one of the things that we hear a lot is this process is not as student friendly as maybe it could be. And I hear that from the students in my research that, oh, if this was set up a little bit easier, then that would make this whole process a bit easier. But what does that actually mean when we get down to the nitty gritty? So let's start with that question. So, what does a student friendly process actually look like from your lens? And where do you see the biggest tension in achieving that is? And I'm gonna leave this open to you all. I guess I should let you introduce yourselves first. Yes, please introduce yourself. Um, and then give it a little bit of your perspective. So, Gigi, let's start with you.
Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. I'm Gigi Watson. I'm one of the two directors of My College Audition. We are the one based in Boston, or that started in Boston, the coaching company. And Erica, who's also on this call, is one of our fabulous coaches. She also works for Accepted, so she wears a couple hats here. Yeah, that's me. Jess, did you want me to comment on your question or just pass it for intros?
Let's go ahead and ask for intros first, and then we'll do that.
Erica, I'll toss to you, girl.
Hey. Hi everybody. I'm Erica Spyres. I'm here. I thought Gigi is out of the two of us the expert on process and what would make things easier. She's always in contact with our students. I hear from them as a coach. Of course, I do acting for the song and I do interview prep. But Gigi's the one who also talks to all the parents. So I think that's very valuable for us to know as well. From the accepted side, we volunteer our time to help host the MTCP on the website. So I am the one that you most likely are communicating with if you are sending in registration forms, if you have questions about where to find things on the website. I am the one who does that just because I have an interest in also making this easier for everybody. So next, Bunny.
So I'm Bunny Oldham, and my kids call me just the musical theater mom. They actually got me a t-shirt for Christmas on that. About 6 years ago, we all sat in Chicago Unified, and our kids had a great time auditioning and all landed beautifully. We also run the MT Parent website, which when I started was 127 people, and now it's around 8,000 parents are on that page. And they've made it quite difficult. They've made it very stressful. So 5 years ago, we started Pittsburgh Unifieds in a way to, if we could audition and do it a way a mom would do it, how would it look like? And 5 years later, we've gone from 20 schools and 62 kids that we're graduating this year. And this year, we're doing about 500 kids with 60 schools. So obviously there is a need for this, and our goal is to be a nonprofit to help those marginalized students come from the margins and center themselves in the spotlight. So our job is to connect great kids to great programs like yourselves. Is Leo on here? Let's throw it to Leo.
I don't think Leo has made it in yet, but as soon as Leo does, I will add him to our conversation. Wayne, why don't we go on to you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Wayne Petro. I am the Director of Enrollment and the Incoming Advisor at Pace University. I've been running our audition process for about 14 years here at Pace. And I'm just really thrilled to see so many familiar faces. And I know a lot of you from many, many years back. So I'm happy to share any knowledge that I can. My thesis in grad school was also on this process way back in 2014. So this is something that is near and dear to me. I've been at again, I've been at Pace for ages, but I was also at Marymount for a while, and I graduated from Cornish College of the Arts, now Seattle University College of the Arts in Seattle. So like, I'm steeped in this, and I'm just happy to be a part of the conversation. I don't know who is another panelist,
It's
so
Christine. You are up.
Hi, my name's Christine, and I'm an actor, but I also run a conservatory program for high school students in the Atlanta, Georgia area. City Springs Theater Company is the name of the company that I work with. I'm sure for those of you who are the heads of programs, I'm sure you've seen many of my students. As part of that program, we also have a very concierge program called College Process, which is typically about a dozen to 15 kids that I basically work with very hands-on, one-on-one to prepare them for this audition process. It's essentially June to May, and I'm really happy to be here because I have so many questions. I also deal with parents, and I just want to make it as easy as possible for them. We have students from all backgrounds, and it's just overwhelming. That's what a lot of them say. So I am just, thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
Of course, we're happy to have you. And for those of you who are watching this, please feel free to put your questions in the chat. Erin Brown, our VP of Conferences, is going to be watching the chat and collecting all of those questions for a little bit of Q&A at the end. Okay, so just to go back to that first question is, what does a student-friendly process really look like from your lens? And then if you could identify maybe the biggest tension that you see, that'd be really helpful. Let's see, Erica, let's start with you.
I don't think my face looked like it volunteered, but I'll go with it. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is that so many people want the same thing and just have a different idea of how to get it. So I think, to me, what I've seen through the years of helping try to administer musical theater common pre-screen is a lot of people have a lot of great ideas, and trying to find where we can make and actually simplify those. Because if we include every single great idea, then it actually does become a lot more difficult, right? Every tiny little thing that seems like it's helpful eventually goes by the wayside, and makes things more difficult. So I think that if we can overall treat each other with grace and kindness, and even if the students do come in with something a little bit different, being okay with that, because we know that they were trying to accomplish all of the things. So yeah, I would say that it's just difficult. It's difficult to get everybody to agree on what that simple looks like.
Yeah, and so I just add to that, because Eric and I were in on that same meeting a couple of years ago about trying to get more of us on the same page with that. And while like we at Pace, and like I work with about 20 faculty in doing this like massive, complex, multi-layered audition process, and getting all of us onto a same page was just not going to happen. And yes, we all agree that we want to make this a little bit easier and a little bit simpler for students, but we also need things that are specific to our unique institutions. We're all so different, and we're all so amazing in what we individually do. And I think that, because there are so many MT programs out there, that making us individual in a way is also important too. And so that has to be an aspect of the conversation about this. Yes, we want to make it easy. Accessibility is like front and foremost, but how do we make it accessible and yet also um, a process that gives our faculty the information that they need to get in order to do the pre-screen process. And I'm talking mostly about the pre-screen process, because once we get to the live in-person audition, it becomes a whole different thing too. So I will just add that little bit of tidbit. And again, I'm mostly staff. I work very closely with the faculty in the College of Performing Arts, but I'm the bridge. I'm the kind of like the nexus between admissions and the faculty. So I have both minds always at play through all of the process. So
I think what we have found at Pittsburgh Unified in dealing with the 50 to 60 programs is everyone does have their special needs. Do you want to be dance heavy? Do we want to be acting heavy? And what we have found in working with our professors and doing follow-up after the event questionnaires to them, we do use the common pre-screen, and that is where they have the benchmark. But at the end of the day, I would say 99% of our schools say, what do you want to see at this level? They want to see what the student is comfortable and happy in sharing. And I think that's important to realize as professors, is that you're not alone in asking that, because most of the professors are like, well, I want to be a little different. I want to just have them sing what makes them happy. And that is the answer from most of our professors.
yeah, and to add to that, Bunny, and I know we've talked a lot about this over the past couple of years too. Yes, like individuality is most important, and like creating the space in which that can happen looks a little bit different from institution to institution.
And each of you guys know exactly what you want and what will fit within 15 seconds, I think, of seeing a kid in an audition. So if you like them, call them back. If you don't, tell them, close that door for them. And I think that would make it a lot easier for the kids and the families as well.
I want to get to a question that's kind of near and dear to my heart. What are some of the most common misconceptions that, as coaches and people that aren't necessarily faculty, that you think that faculty have about coaches? And I know that you're sitting in front of a bunch of faculty and that this can be intimidating. I want to acknowledge that. But what do you think are the misconceptions or assumptions that faculty make about you and your job? For those of you that do that.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump on this. So many. I always try to come at these things from the perspective of being on both sides. So I'm going to deliver, what I think is in the best interest of the student when I say this. But over rehearsed is like, I know people don't want the student to be over rehearsed because we want an authentic performance and we want to see the performer and the person. But the fact is, in my experience, that the more rehearsed they are, the more available they are to be themselves. So I think that that's on my mind a lot of the time. And when I'm working with the student, I think that's the biggest thing. And also just not being preparation, just the word preparation and all the things that it means. And you want somebody to be able to execute what you've asked them to do. And that requires a lot of time and attention, I think, to be able to do it. I know that from the perspective of being an actor, but it's like the attraction to somebody who just is able to bring themselves. It's splitting the difference on those things. I don't know if that really answered your question, but that's on my mind a lot. How do I meet in the middle and give you guys what you want, but also help them be prepared and not nervous? Kids these days are very anxious and they're overwhelmed. And I need to manage that too. And the parents. I hope that answers your question.
Definitely. Does anybody else have anything to add?
I think that I love this question, Jess. It feels like it's like a dating show question. It's like, well, how do we answer that right? But no, I think in talking to my other friends of mine who aren't on this call necessarily, but are faculty auditors or run programs, much like all of you wonderful folks, what I find is that perhaps one misconception sometimes is that a coach is imposing their ideas about a piece on the student and obscuring the auditor's ability to really see the student, which I think is what the students want most of all, is just to feel like they were seen, even if they get a rejection. When in fact, I do think that for most coaches, it's really the opposite. I think at MCA, each of our coaches, Erica is great at this, works with a student to find who they are through this process, which is like a gift of this very, at times, overwhelming process. I always tell families, like, you can actually gain a lot of self-knowledge and self-confidence by going through this and like getting to make it your own personal national tour of meeting all these folks, and find out more about what your perspective is as a young artist. And so I think we view it as our job to actually help them find their take on the material, what their take is, and make bolder choices in that direction, and just encourage more authentic, more relaxed, more fully unique self comes into the audition room, so that schools can evaluate well and know who this kid is quickly and efficiently and authentically, and can judge if it's going to be a fit or not. And so the student can be relaxed enough to judge that for themselves in the inverse as well. Yeah.
Great. Any other responses to that?
I will say, like, I also coach a little bit and I teach too, and I will say that like coaching it, especially in the musical theater audition world, like it lends to the confidence that they walk into the room with, right? And like we feel so like when students come in with no coaching, with no experience coming into this, like we have to work a lot harder to see like can this work out, right? And I think you're so valuable to this industry, right? And everything that you're doing is right? Helping them find their individual voice, and especially with material, right? And getting them like exposed to art material, it is so valuable. So I don't see that there's anything and again, I'm in the audition room across 8 programs too, so like I see a wide variety of things, and everything you say, everyone that is coaching out here has the same like ideals. Like, yes, you don't want them to be over rehearsed in that room. You want them to be able to play and to not be so set in what you've, right? And yes, over coached is something that on the other side of the table, is part of the vernacular, but you are doing a really good work here in getting them to, getting them into the room.
I think one thing I always say pretty much every single lesson, the very first lesson where when I meet a new student, is I tell them where I went to school and nobody's ever heard of it. And I say that on purpose because I try to always encourage them. If you want a BFA MT program, that's awesome. But know that there are many ways to get to the path. There's no one right way. So oftentimes we are also encouraging them to look at a much broader range of schools than they had ever even known was out there. They have like 5 on their list that they've heard about, and then we're like, how about these 15, right? So I think that's a big thing too. And also, if they're not showing that they really have a lot of joy or love for particular types of avenues, then we try to gently nudge them about, have you thought about this direction, still in the same idea, right? But like ultimately it's up to them to kind of decide where they want this next step to go.
Erica, I really appreciate that because at Pittsburgh Unified's, I think almost every parent that goes through it, after they've successfully launched their kid, they think they can become a coach. So there's these coaches all out there that sure you can get the right music. But when it comes down for a kid to pick a school, there's so much more to that. Financials, time away from family, if there's sickness, illness, and they want to be closer to home, things like that. And we've heard of so many coaches that are not at the caliber of the coaches that are on here, that have said, you got into Syracuse, why would you go to Brunel? Like things like that, which are really hard to hear when the parents come back to us and say, this was a Pittsburgh Unified School, is it as good? And yeah, if the training is there and the finances work for you and your kid really feels comfortable there, that's the right school for you. So I appreciate the coaches that do look at the whole picture.
So that actually is a great segue to myths and assumptions that come from parents and students. And what are you constantly hearing year after year after year, coming from parents and students that you wish that could be maybe addressed? And how do those assumptions affect students in this process?
I have so many. Can I start? The first one's about overdone songs. I just actually did a summer intensive at a school, which exposed me to kids outside of my program, and they had a lot of the same questions about this. They're like, I don't want to do an overdone song. I kind of have a philosophy on this, which I don't know if everyone agrees with me, but I basically am like, it's the right song for you. We shouldn't have a list. But I would love to, hear if that's how everybody feels, because that's what everyone says. But I'm like, we also know that there's certain songs that are popular at a time and we hear them a lot. And do you not want to hear them? And I think the other thing is about everyone wants to hear everybody belt. That's all that they want to hear. And I feel as a voice teacher as well that I try to impart that you need to sing in your authentic voice, and you need to sing what's helpful for you, and you need to sing songs that suit your voice and celebrate your voice. But at the same time, I also have been in rooms with people where they've given more attention to the students that's belting their face off. And so it's really hard for me in my position to see that happen and then turn around and say what I say. So those are the two big ones for me.
Right. Any other assumptions or myths that maybe that we as faculty can do a better job of clearly communicating so that they don't have to come up as myths or assumptions? Wayne.
I would say that you need to look at BA programs too. And there is a myth that BFA programs are where you need to be if you're serious about this. And I think comes from a lot of high school guidance counselors, not from necessarily the coaching world necessarily, but you have to look at the heart of like what a BA program is. And there are a lot of amazing BA programs out there that can give you what you and can put you on the path to where you need to go, almost as good as what a BFA program is. And that I think is a big misconception, that a BA program is lesser. Some BA programs are what you, if you don't get, and unfortunately there are places where you get the BA program if you're not in the BFA program. That's not true of all schools though, so you really have to do that research.
Can I add on? I'm not on the panel, but I wanted to piggyback on what Erica said, because I think for the coaches, as long as the students understand that their educational journey is their responsibility, it doesn't matter where they go. I teach currently in a BA program, but I've taught in BFA, and all of my students understand that their journey in college is their responsibility. A BFA program is not going to hand you a career on a silver platter. And we've actually had kids transfer from BFAs to our program. That is on my work wife's crown. When she started, there were about 27 musical theater majors, and now we have over 105. So just my little tidbit.
Thank you, Tim. And just a reminder that all questions can go into the chat. We have Erin monitoring so that we can do a Q&A different than the questions that I'm asking at the end as well. Something that has been brought up before is transparency in communication specifically. That's something that I saw a lot in my research over the past year. So are there some things that we as faculty can do better about being transparent in our communications? What do students, what level of transparency do students want? I know it's not going to be the same for everybody, but are there ways to improve that part of the process and what you've seen working with students?
I do think where I'm seeing that there could be more is after the callback has been sent out, the invitation to the live audition, the live portion of the audition, in communicating with students who need to change their times, because things I mean, my kids are involved in a million things at their high schools, academically and artistically. It is one of the biggest parts of my job is coordinating their live audition. And sometimes we don't hear back from them for weeks. Sometimes like 2 days before they go to Chicago, they don't even know if they can move their time and what they're expected to prepare for that live audition. Sometimes we're not hearing until a couple of days before, and I'm just trying to get them ready and again minimize stress. And on the part of the parents as well, they need to know where they need to be. They need to know how they're going to get there. So I would just say communication. I say that while also knowing that you guys are also teaching class. Or doing your actual job that involves the students that you currently have at the school. So I say this with that caveat of I understand, but that would probably be the biggest complaint that I hear from the kids. And when they're making decisions about the schools, they'll often say, I don't want to go to that school. They did not communicate with me. And so I can't help but, think about that.
Well, this is my job for you. A lot of faculty are not the ones doing this. So like, I'm lucky at Pace that this is what I do. So like, and I know people here because I do this process. So for faculty out there that need help with this, reach out to me. I will let you know like a very efficient way of communicating the callback information in a timely way. Erica and with Accepted we have a really great system that communicates all of that. So, and Erica knows this. So if you need help.
I think one thing that's really specific but helpful, and this is more of an admin thing probably, but letting students know when they'll hear back from pre-screens. It's nice when there's an exact date, if possible, just by which they'll have heard, so that they can not bug you guys, and like we can save your admin team some headache, and the kids can stop getting in a twist about it mentally. And they can also have finger on the trigger ready to book the audition location that is most cost efficient for their family, knowing that most pre-screen decisions will be coming out around X time. And they, at some schools, they go like hotcakes, as you guys know. And so, especially at Unifieds. And so if a kid for like financial reasons needs a Unified slot and is hoping to avoid a virtual, it's nice so that they can plan on when that scheduling will be happening ish. Yeah.
And for the MT parent page, all the parents have gotten together and there's these surveys where, when did you hear? How'd you hear? What was the process for you? So everyone kind of shares it in a group working document, just so you guys know. 8,000 parents are behind that. And then we also have one for Pittsburgh Unifieds where we've asked the schools, but I'm wondering if MTEA can put something out for the schools, and you do the questionnaire of, this is the process, these are the expectations, these are the dates and guidelines, and put it out there for each other and families, if that would cut down the communication for you guys too, because you guys don't need to be answering 800 parents that wonder if they're getting into PACE.
Yeah, I don't want to get those emails because they would all go to the president email. I know they would.
I try to make sure that does not happen. So
We love that.
I'm curious though, for the other institutions here. So I do say that within about 2 to 3 weeks that you'll hear back. Yes, there are delays at the very beginning and around the holiday times, but like, do other schools publish their like when you will get back after the pre-screen? Do you publish that on your website, or is it a little bit more? So I really am on the faculty to do their reviews within about 2 to 3 weeks, and then I communicate with everyone within about 3 weeks of the submission, and I try my hardest. There are times that doesn't happen because there's just too many voices in the room about like whether to call them back. But is that not something that other schools are doing?
It's very similar to what Ithaca does. We try to get a decision made within 2 weeks. It doesn't always happen because of various things, faculty schedules, that sort of thing. I don't know if it's published on our website, but that is the protocol that the faculty are guided with. And we also have a Wayne Petro at Ithaca College. Max Lord Krause is actually leaving this year, so we'll have somebody new next year. But he keeps us on task to ensure that people aren't waiting for too long. It also making sure when you go to your accepted page that you select the button that says the date they submitted and don't just start at the top of your queue. That's really important, and it's a small detail that can be missed. So we're always encouraged to do that as well.
Yes, and Christine, I like what you put in the chat about it's not consistent. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem is that it's not school by school, year to year, it's not the same. And it's also not the same. I typically have somewhere between 12 and 18 students. Even within the students that I have, it's not consistent. One person's heard from a school, another person hasn't heard from the school. They hear 3 weeks later. I know some schools have rolling, I just call it like rolling live audition invitations. That's just my kind of way of explaining it to my students. And I know that internally who those schools are, but even within that, it doesn't seem consistent. So it's really hard for me to give a parent advice or a student advice. And I do say, you need to check your get accepted. You need to check your email. Believe it or not, getting the kids to check email is hard enough. Hopefully by the time that they come to college, it gets a little better. But it's just not that nothing is in this, but the communication itself is also not. So it's just hard to get answers sometimes. And, I tried it. I'm available to my students to say, this is what we're going to do. And this is the plan that we're going to go with. And I think because they have me, they're at an advantage in that sense. But for the kids who do not have that, I wonder. And I think that's also why you're getting so many emails, or like empty parents, why empty parents sometimes becomes what it becomes, because everybody's just trying to crowdsource for information. And that's also how rumors get spread.
Yep.
I don't have this problem. I'm just sharing you from my perspective.
And unlike any other major out there, you've got the academic side and then you got the artistic side. So I heard from this school, I think I got in. Well, you didn't get in artistically, and there's like a lot of confusion there as well. But I don't know how you'd fix it as a university, because you are different departments. But that is something to work on.
Yeah, and just to add to the complexity of that, Christine, when someone is, it's much harder for us to say no to someone than it is to say yes. Like, I'm talking about the pre-screen stage. I think that's where we're all at with the communication right now, because
Yeah. I do have questions about the after that too as well that I'd love to touch on before.
And again, to the transparency part of this. So what happens for us at PACE is that, if it's a yes for any of each program is assigned a group of faculty members that do a review. And if anyone says yes, they're through, right? But if anyone says it's a maybe, then it has to go into a more of a review. So that does initiate a delay in things, and then all of those maybes have to get reviewed by other faculty members, and then it's either we move them through or it's a no. And sometimes that maybe list, depending on the program head that's reviewing that can delay things. So yeah, sometimes there is that delay, and it's just because we want to be very careful before we tell someone that we're not going to be able to see them for the audition.
Right. I do. Typically what I say to my students is, when you audition for a Broadway show, because that's what they all want to do, you actually don't even get an email saying that you didn't get it. I'm trying to prepare them for the fact that they may not receive a response. It's just hard to know what to recommend because there's no dates. And I actually don't know that you guys should give dates, because I don't know that that would work for you. It just makes it hard, because some of it's going into January. It's starting in September, but it's going into January. It's hard to manage. That's really, I actually don't disagree with anything that you said, Wayne.
Well, all schools should give a response. I'm surprised that schools
they're
are not.
They're getting a response.
Yeah.
It's just that sometimes it's 4 months later or whatever, and then it's just so hard to manage, especially when we have students that are auditioning for 20 schools or 30 schools, and it's like all these different correspondences, and some of them are coming on immediately after they get our call back. Some of it's coming 4 weeks later. Sometimes it's coming 2 days before their audition. It's just this, basically you're signing up to be glued to your phone for your senior year, which is basically what I recommend. I don't have a solution to the problem, by the way. I don't know what I would do if I was in your shoes.
Listen, I try not, that's not the situation at Pace. And if it is for like anyone, then I apologize. But this is something that we can fix as institutions, though. Like that the timing of that communication. And I fully hear you. And that is always something that I've always tried to do quite well at Pace. I don't know where everyone else is with that, though.
Honey, I wanted to give you a chance to speak on this as well.
I will say, Wayne, that you are the what would be the gold bar on that most people do not hear back from the schools if it's a no. Of course, they hear if there's a callback, but they don't hear if it's a no until May, because a lot of these schools, especially the kids on the border, they're holding back in case there's a waitlist situation or they need to be replaced, and it's totally understandable, right? I'd rather have a maybe than a no. But a lot of these parents, when you're going into April, and I believe that comparison is the thief of joy. These kids are so stressed out because they hear about their friends getting 20 offers, and they're waiting for a yes, no, or maybe. It makes it a very stressful cesspool. So I think that all emails should just go to Wayne from now on. Like, did I get in?
Yes, get ready, Wayne.
I do like Wayne's approach.
No, we as institutions need to do better at this. Like,
Yeah.
and I say this, we as collective, we need to.
Mm-hmm. It's like I said, no, I mean, I don't want to say my kids are lucky. I think they are lucky, but because I'm able to talk through it with them. But for a parent who's, has no idea what they're doing, I don't think they know how to deal with this. I was related to that. I do, since we're chatting about communication, once a student is accepted, communication about, I'm deciding between 4 or 5 programs and I'd really like to come and visit, and financial aid. I think that could also be an area where there could be better communication, and it's not consistent from school to school. And I understand it can't really be regulated to be, but that's another area where I actually have a question as to what is the preference for how that should go. Should it come from the student? Should it come from the parent? Should it come from the parent and the student? Should it go to the head of the program? Should it go to admissions? I don't know if we're allowed to ask a question, Jessica, but
well, I want to make sure that we get through some of the other questions. But yes, love that, putting a pin in it. And even if we don't get to it, we can.
I think it's important for any professor that is doing their professor job and the recruiting job, if they would go to admissions and say, I need a person to help me with this. Because the majority of directors that we work with they are the ones doing it all. And I don't know how they do it all. It is a lot. And you guys are taking care not only of their materials, but also their hearts, because you all fall in love with these kids. We see it, we know it. And it is a lot for you to take on, that maybe it is time for some of you guys to go to admissions and say, I need recruitment help.
Yeah. I want to get to this last question, and the answer might be just what we were talking about, but if we could redesign a part of this process together tomorrow, we could totally redo it, it's fixed. What would be the first thing that you would do? Gigi, let's start with you.
Oh boy. I think in my dream world, just simplifying this process with the requirements is probably my number one dream of what I would redesign. And I hear you, Wayne, on the reasons why that's difficult. I think it's, from my perspective as a coach, with all that is thrown at these kids that they have to take care of and be on top of academically and performing arts wise. And an increasing number of them have a blended college list, as I call it, of BA and BFA programs, which actually makes the requirements more for various reasons. Seeing kids like compromise on their work in a way that upsets them because it's just too much for one person to get through in terms of the requirements and how many versions of a piece they have to have on tape. It hurts my heart a little bit, because I do think it makes it not as helpful for the schools as well, because so many students who don't have help view this as just an impossible task that they're not going to be able to get through. And so I think simplifying, even if that means some concessions from the institutions, does improve access. And I know that every side has to give on this a little bit. But I think I would just love to see even more unity and standardization on requirements, for the MT folks with all that they're putting together for these packages for pre-screens and auditions.
Great.
And Jessica and Erica, this might be a pie in the sky thing. Our goal is to try to make this as easy as possible. And I'm not saying that everyone even knows what Pittsburgh Unifieds is, but if there is a way that we can work with Accepted and MTEA, and we can help manage that with talking to the schools and getting an information document of some sort out there that is written in your words, but you send it to a working document so we can have and share with the parents. I'm more than happy to set something up.
What kind of information are you looking for specifically?
Just like we did for when UArts shut down, like we literally emailed all the schools. This is what's your process? Are you taking people? And we sent it out to the people that needed to see it. It worked. It might be a document that we use for now, and then sometime when Wayne is retired and he wants to do it for a living, he can take it over.
Love that.
Well, and funny enough, this did exist in the 80s. It was called Dramatics Magazine. They would send out the list of colleges and like what you had to do for each one and for scholarships and dates and all this thing. It did exist at one point.
I think the thing about the requirements that's so difficult for me to manage with so many students is not necessarily like, oh, you have to do 2 songs and a monologue or 2 songs and 2 monologues. That, I think, at least in my experience, they've got their heads wrapped around that. That's what they're walking into. It's the little things like the time requirement with the slate, the time requirement without a slate, the time requirement for a dance with a slate. Yes, it can be with a slate, but it has to be a full body. No, this one has to be 3/4. No, this one has to be this. But we're redefining what full body actually means. Our school redefines full body as being slightly different. Oh, you have to also slate the date that you're recording it. That's when I think it gets out of control, because you're doing multiple takes of the same thing because one school wants it to be ever so slightly different when it's just about a slate or something like that. I think I would want to live in a world where we can at least get that to being a little bit easier, if possible. I don't object so much about, like Wayne said, I want to see more dance. I want to see a ballet combo. That's based on your program. I can understand that. It's the little things like that that I would love to see be improved upon.
Yeah, I completely agree, Christine. And everything that everybody has said, absolutely. I will tell you, we are more than happy to put this together with Musical Theater Common pre-screen each year. What gets difficult is as things change throughout seasons, people will be like, well, what about this? Right? It's like, well, we've already published this year, and I can't really change that now, because then all the kids who got on there early and already did it, now it's bad for them. Right. So we always try to get people to publish on their websites as quickly as possible, which we also understand is not all your jobs. You have administrators, web administrators sometimes, and that has to go through them. So it's getting better. I think it's getting better than it was. Is it getting better than it was many years ago before we had, this influx of however many people are applying to like 20 plus schools? No, but like things are complex, but I think ultimately we're trying to work together. Like there are so many rock stars on this call right now, and I'm seeing when I see the messages here also in the chat, I feel for you, Matthew, like, yes, absolutely. And everybody's dealing with cutbacks right now. And the one thing that I'm seeing with everybody being overwhelmed, students, parents, all of us, oh my gosh, they still want to do musical theater. Isn't that great? It's freaking great. Like with so many things being, and I'm not just trying to be like pie in the sky, like I really believe like that is amazing that this still matters to so many people and it matters to us, and that's why we're here. So I think if we all keep remembering that and we will work together and with kindness, leading with kindness, trying to make this better, then we will. And that can be tough. It's not without challenges, right? But we're already seeing it. So I that's what I really want to try to focus on.
I love that. Thank you, Erica. Aaron, I want to throw it to you for a second and give us a question from the chat.
Well, Erica set me up. I was going to use, let's start with Maddie's question. Okay, segue. And so the Maddie Miller asked, basically, where we are living in a world where students are applying to 20 plus schools, seemingly as a badge of honor. Sometimes it appears as they reveal on their TikToks. With the understanding that every student who auditions adds to the faculty's workload to review response, how do we balance an easy and inclusive process with making it so easy that students are wasting our and or their time at it? Frankly, the most interesting students to Maddie are the ones that are interested in his school, Chico State, unique way of doing things that's really hard to measure in an audition. So thoughts about that balance of an inclusive process, yet in a way that does add some of that rigor that we as faculty members often are looking for.
Not everybody at once. It's fine.
I only
It's
have some
complicated.
thoughts. I feel like somebody
Great.
else can answer this better than I can, but I read that and I was just like, I get it. I will tell you as somebody like many of you, I have 3 hats, right? At least 3 hats that I wear in 3 different jobs that I do. On the one hand, I'm hearing people want to increase applications, Maddie, right? Like, well, this school wants to increase applications. So my job at Accepted is to try to help them increase applications. On the other hand, well, we're getting all these applications, but we don't like the ones we're getting, right? Because this isn't what we want. Okay, I'm going to try my best to make sure we're getting the kind of people that you want, right? And I do know that working with Gigi, like she does a great job of helping curate their list so that it actually matches them and they're not just getting schools that are filler schools. And she's really good about if they have gotten in somewhere early, please don't mess with the process with this other school anymore if you know you already want that school. Allow somebody else to do it. Don't muddy those waters for them if you're actually not that interested in it. But once again, those are kids with a coach, right? So if we can try to get more of that word out of, this matters, and try to make your decisions as intentional as you can.
And I think that's what we're trying to do. And here we are saying, don't audition for 20 schools, but here's 60 that you're in front of. Our thing at Pittsburgh is that we've looked at these kids, we've vetted them, we know that they're ready to audition in October. If they are not ready, we send them back. We refund them totally and give them names of a couple coaches to work with. And quite frankly, and I'll be transparent, we raised our prices this year, $300, thinking that it would take longer to sell out. We sold out immediately. We took that $300 and we have it in a budget. None of us made any extra money, but what that is used for is stipends for kids to pay for travel, to pay for coaching and things like that. We're trying to make it more accessible for these kids to be able to do so. And by doing this, we really appreciate the schools said their no's, because then those doors can close and those kids can focus on the schools that do want them. And as well as you don't get all these additional emails. So we're trying to reimagine the way that the audition process is done in that case. And it's a work in progress. I think it has changed in the last 4 or 5 years to be better and to have less frustration. I hope you guys feel the same way.
I do just want to just echo what Erica said, Matthew, that I totally hear this tension. And when I've talked with my friends who are faculty or coordinators for performing arts admissions recently, this definitely comes up. And I do think that, the students without a coach who are just applying to schools randomly, like, sadly, I have no control over what those students are doing. I don't let a student audition for a school unless they can name 3 authentic reasons why they love that program specifically. And they're not allowed otherwise to put it on their list. But I think that maybe something like a short essay prompt that's part of the artistic pre-screen, or some schools don't even pre-screen, they just ask for a headshot resume submission and 300 words on why Chico State specifically. And then you can kind of use that as part of your adjudication process. Definitely something, obviously, that I'm sure you ask in the audition room of why Chico State. But I do think that trying to assume that students are doing the work to create a balance list and making it easy to get into the audition room as possible, and then you can do the work you need to do in the audition room. I'm sure on that a little bit. But I hear you. This is a tough one, and the TikTokers are real.
I try to tell my students, it's not baseball cards. You don't collect all of the set. Like, you have to compartmentalize. You have to narrow it down. Again, I'm working with them one-on-one, so I'm trying to spread the word. But I think that the social media of it all is definitely contributing to the problem, for sure. I don't have a solution to that problem either. I also think that they don't have amazing communication skills sometimes. They don't want to say no. Because they don't want to make that uncomfortable. They don't want to do the uncomfortable email. Working on that as well, but
I think that some of the coaches need to also say is there's a lot of, hey, show interest in the school and you're having a better chance to get in, which is not true, and it's causing a lot more work on both ends. But we have seen kids that are writing form letters to each school saying that they're the #1 choice, and that's not fair either. So I think there needs to be accountability on both sides of the fence, and communication has to be authentic and honest, and I don't know how to fix that one either.
I know we're getting close running out of time. I wanted to go to question was about looking for open access resources. This was in response to one of Gigi's comments, or research guides or LibGuide for types of things for finding resources as students are prepping or things that they may need.
Yeah, I wasn't sure quite what that Amanda's question was referring to, like in terms of material or.
Yeah, you had mentioned that sometimes there's an access barrier. They can do it in one version, they can't do it in all the others. And it wasn't I missed something in there. Was wondering if you were looking for different variations of something and having a hard time finding the second variation or the third variation, and then realized, oh, it's a difference in how many bars or what style or whatever. And it wasn't that. But also looking for resources if it's open access, or if trying to put together research guides or that sort of thing. Perhaps speaking with theater librarians or that sort of thing might be a way of creating that sort of research guide, or we call them, their LibGuides is the SpringShare software name for them, that librarians use to create these guides that I'm sure all of our academic colleagues here are used to seeing from library pages. SDQ head nods, yeah, where we build all these nice little research guides for you all to find our resources. Perhaps there's something like that you guys could look into, or you could work with the librarians that to build to help with this sort of thing as well.
Yeah, definitely. No, I appreciate that. I think I've been talking with some folks about like what the best version of that might be, or what a version of that we could work on might be. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Erica, this could be something that Accepted could help us with. Maybe because basically, Amanda, I think what Amanda they're asking is like a database of material. Is that a little bit more in the line of what you're going for here?
Well, there could be a database of material, but also there's a lot of material that's already available out there for free. And part of it could be providing some of that information literacy on how to find that material. Even if it's just, hey, here's a link to IMSLP. You can find a lot of free material there. And we're starting to get into the 1920s being far enough out that a lot of that's coming out of copyright protection. Woo! So we should be starting to see some of that roll out. Especially the early recordings are starting to become available, folks. That's really exciting. But also, you know, some of that might be available. There might be other things that people have made available specifically directly into the public domain that could be linked as well, or even information about the history of a musical so that students have context. What are the other musical theater open access resources that are available for students to look at and to use? That sort of thing, because we all know that books are expensive, music's expensive, this whole process is expensive for students. So if we can find one way of lessening that burden even before they get to college, because I know on college campuses, we're working with OA and using library resources and all that sort of thing to try to lessen that academic burden of books. Maybe we can try to lessen that burden on their way in as well.
May
Yeah.
I ask a question in the opposite? How do you all feel, and I'm sure there's a number of ideas here in terms of access when we're talking about tracks? I have some students who sometimes just sing to a karaoke track and it's like way too much. And I'm like, hey, if you're going to do that, maybe find one that's just piano only. But like, I've definitely had kids come in and like, yeah, this is what I'm practicing with and this is what I want to use. And I try to discourage that. But on the other hand, it's there and it's available. So is that, how do people feel about that?
Well, and I just want to acknowledge that we're 2 minutes to time, and like you said, there would be a lot of great ideas in the room. But just to take what you're saying, that if we're really talking about a student-friendly experience, that just to acknowledge that we're going to have a student come in to the audition with that kind of karaoke track, and while we might think, "Ooh, that's a choice," is maybe a little too much for me, it might be the only thing that they could access. And so we as faculty just have to keep that in the back of our head of, okay, maybe it's not my taste, but that was part of making it a student friendly process, is that was what they had access to today. And then maybe asking like, hey, where did you get this track from? And having it be a conversation piece instead of a piece where we're dinging them in the audition for that. We are 1 minute out, and I want to thank our panelists so much for being here and for providing your expertise, your knowledge. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I know that this is a conversation that is constantly evolving and going, and we will probably be touching on this at our conference in January. So again, our MTEA conference is January, San Diego, January 8th through 10th in San Diego. It's going to be super duper fun. And just because I have people on here, if you are interested in submitting to the MTEA journal, that is open currently for submissions. Thank you again to our panelists and everyone else. We're going to do a quick transition over to our regional breakouts. So thank you all again. Really appreciate it. Have a good one.